Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me today as we keep on going in our study of the book, The Integral Human Being, and we continue our weekly discussions based on this amazing book. And if you look at it, I would like to share the content of the book and remind ourselves that this is the second book of the psychology series or psychology collection, the 16 book series that Joanna de Angelis, spiritual author, has given to us in collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco. And I love to bring it to us every week. The fact that Joanna de Angelis created this bridge between spiritism and depth psychology, and we will be discussing some of the issues and therapies offered in this book today. Specifically, where we'll come across several reflections about the issue of self-discovery. But if you think about it, if you consider how vulnerable we are, this is a moment that humanity as a whole is undergoing so much. And a lot of it is just translated as pain and suffering. And the book is this amazing gift, as I call it, because it discusses root causes and even some solutions to our issues, our psychological issues. And today, as we have been doing in the past, we are just giving and going layer by layer in this amazing book to get to the end of it. And let's just keep on going. And before I get to the content proper of self-discovery, just wanted to let you know that the book is divided in 9 parts. We start today our third part, and the third part is only 3 chapters. Each chapter stands from 3 to 5 pages. In this case, today we have 6 pages, so it's a little bit longer, but the majority of the chapters are only 3 pages. And we are, if you think about 9 parts, we're about to get into to conclude in a couple of weeks of the third part. So 30% accomplished. Cool. And today, self-discovery is a topic of the whole title, the title of the whole chapter, sorry. And as we know, those are the themes that are so important for us to work with Joanna. And what I wanted to talk to everyone today is the fact that Joanna addresses this topic, right? This topic of self-discovery throughout her body of work. And some of the points that she brings to us are, if we put it in ABC, right? The process, which is it self-discovery is actually, according to Joanna, the greatest challenge to us, as she calls the modern man. And she calls it it's like this the labor akin to labor pains, right? So if we think in terms of giving birth, self discovery is requires like the journey of a young parent, a young mother and father, especially the mother going through this all the transformation that the body and of course the self is going through. It requires courage in order to be able to get to the new state of no longer an individual or a pregnant individual, but actually the mother in this case. And she talks a little bit about the benefits of self-discovery, and specifically, very, very high level, she says, right, when we seek and find ourselves, we reach this state of well-being. Okay, so park it there. When we seek and find, it requires courage. It's very difficult, but when we seek and we find ourselves who we truly are, we get to a state of feeling well. And the goals is just goal for attaining awareness of who we are, how we react to things emotionally or physically, what we do to ourselves, even from a process of self awareness, what are the required steps to this process that we are calling so challenging, right? So, uh, Joanna begins the chapter by really right there, right from the beginning, focus on that effort that it is to be able to acquire, to live through our own humanized identity, right? So I just going to break down what she's bringing to us right at the beginning, right? And it's um, in the slide here, and I can read it. I would just go ahead and go straight to break it down, right? There's an effort that is necessary for us to live, to acquire and live through our own humanized identity that pushes us to have to go through the process of self discovery. So, my questions were, okay, Joanna, okay, you're telling me that it's hard, but you have to go through. And it's really a process that's very important. But what is the process of self-discovery? And I went out of the book and looked into the dictionary psychology, and self-discovery in the field of psychology, and psychologists point us to the idea of it's a process of illuminating our daemon, Daimon, which in philosophy comes from the Greek word your true self. All right. So they say self discovery is to put some light, right, illumination, and be able to look inwardly to find our true self. And um, the goal for this journey of self-discovery is just to look at all inside of us. What are our personal potentiality, right? Also, um, what are our perhaps sense of purpose for living? And as a result, when you look at who I am, but also what do I see as my potentiality? What do I see as my real purpose? And Joanna, boy, she really hammers on this idea of what is the purpose for living. But I go back to Joanna and says, well, okay, Joanna, yeah. The process of self-discovery is important because it illuminates who I am and brings about my personality, my purpose for life. I get this, but why is this prerequisite, or what she calls this humanization, right? And if we again go into the psychology dictionary, there we find that humanization is the affirmation of the human nature in others. Oh, so we're no longer talking about ourselves, right? So in psychology, what they're saying that is the process of humanization is to look and recognize the inalienable humanity of everyone else that are around us, right? Those anyone that we have an interaction, those are the individuals, right? And so I said, okay, got it. So it's a process to understand my potential. It's a process to understand my purpose, and really to heighten the opportunities or identify opportunities to act upon those potentials in my life. I also see that this process of humanization really means to look at the other and humanize them, right? It's their inalienable right to be treated as a human. And why does it matter? It's because we live through a society currently, and we're talking about conflicts and wars and other types of issues that we're facing as a society, such as perhaps something that is very hard for me on a personal level, which is the problem of homelessness, or for others, the problems of social economical dramatic social economical differences, where a given group of people have access to so much and another group of people, driven maybe by education, cultural environment, gender, or just political dictum, that dehumanize. We live through a moment of dehumanization, right? And discrimination, and even the failure by all of us, generally speaking, to be concerned with the other who are suffering in many cases. And for me personally, is that homeless person, right? They're suffering in extreme situations, especially now here where I live. We start to feel cold again, and I love fall. And at the same time, I know that it's leading to very, very difficult extreme temperatures with the cold weather, right? And so Joanna brings all of this because it's a question of us understanding the violence within our own surroundings, the violence of acts of war, or the violence that is contained, for example, in domestic partnerships, or even in her case specifically, we're going to talk today, the violence that exists in just live in a very competitive society, right? So it's all about that versus the humanization process that leads us to look into the other with love, and to remove any or prevent any possibility for cruelty, for aggression, right? So when we humanize ourselves and others, everything seems to be easier, because we start to see the human in us, the human traits, right, in ourselves, in the other. And when conflicts arise, there is room created in that bridge toward reconciliation, peacemaking, peace building, and ending those societal conflicts. Whew, okay, so we talked about all of this, but she starts the chapter with the idea of self identity, self discovery, to find your identity. But what is your identity? And that's my last definition here before I get to the content proper, because identity, from a psychological point of view, just to give us a sense, a frame of mind, right? It's defined by our identity by a set of physical, right, uh, psychological, and interpersonal characteristics. and it's very unique, right? And B, it's all about the range of affiliations that I subscribe. Those affiliations can be either ethnicity, our social roles. I'm a mother, I'm a member of this community, I love this soccer club, or whatever, right? So, physical, what I look like, my age, my uh, uh, physical abilities or not, my psychological and interpersonal characteristics, which are internal, and then what I subscribe to, how I define myself, how I uh, describe myself. So, with these definitions, let's just go right ahead and zoom into what Joanna de Angelis tells us about the self discovery. So, just a note, uh, if this chapter piques your interest, there is an entire book. It's the seventh book of this psychology collection of Joanna de Angelis called Self Discovery, and it's a really good book. I have studied before. I have actually coordinated study groups in the past of the book. I can't wait until we get to do this in our as we continue our sequence of books that we study together. But back to Joanna, right? Joanna, pushes us, you and me, to understand those difficulties that we find in this path called path of self-discovery. And she says that as long as we, human beings, focus all of our energy, and I say this from a quantifiable and finite energy, right? I always think in terms of a jar, right, that we put fill with water, for example, and this is it. We cannot put any more because it will overflow. It's not contained with our capabilities. In any case, she says if we focus, if we invest all of our energies in the acquisitions of values, of things, right? Items that are really are based on, let's say, consumerism, we end up isolated, lonely, and we end up unable to really be a contributing or participant of a community of people. Whoa. Let's why, Joanna? Why can I not acquire material things for my well-being? Well, she goes on to says, yeah, I told you, right? The energy investments. We are what we invest. And with that idea in mind, it is easy to see how by living and we live in a material world, but by living as if we only had this material life, right? Our perspective is really narrow and quite egocentric. We we have a bias to perhaps close off or behave against or even deny the social issues, the social needs, and or even just close our eyes, close our minds to the community that we belong to, that we're part of, right? And we all do this in contraposition or in opposing manner to my individual and personal needs. So it's not that I don't see the community, but in terms of the individual on one hand and community the other, the individual always wins from that material perspective. I hope it's clear to you. So the question that we may pose right now is, wait a minute, is individualism and its individualistic approach to life wrong? Well, not really. The potential problem that she brings to us is that if we only focus our energy, our jar, right? Into that, we are not paying attention in other areas. And she even says, my dear friend, this is me joking here as I see Joanna talking to me, right? She says, my dear friend, you will be postponing the opportunity to amend, to atone, to expiate your past mistakes. And again, this is from a highly spiritual view of life and purpose in life, which is as an immortal soul, right? An immortal spirit. Our spirit and spiritual life reflects what we have been up until now, which includes potentially, very potentially, past errors, past mistakes. So for you to overcome those mistakes, we need to pay attention to them and to atone, to repair. And she said, when you don't look at those things, when you just look at outwardly into external, give it to me, I'll acquire there, I will do that, we're postponing what we need to do from an internal perspective. So she says, postponing our goals in life, thinking we will be better equipped to handle later, is a very immature, psychologically speaking, stance, right? So, as a in veteran procrastinator, my family members will tell you, yes, Marcia, you postponed to the last minute, which is very, very immature. So Joanne is saying, wow, it's not just a sure that I'm postponing for this afternoon. That is the problem. She's saying you're postponing your goals in life, right? Maybe thinking that later will be better equipped, more mature. And she said, no, you are given the right challenges and goals as you are equipped to confront them. I'd love to stop here to give an example. I love the man, right? But if you think in terms of that crazy goal, that self-imposed goal that Michael Phelps did when he said, I will get in one Olympics 8 gold medals, which was ever just unheard of. And he said, I'll do it. And he was very public about, I'm committing to do this challenge. And for the time between one Olympic the next, he just had to work his every moment of his life to be able to be physically fit to do all of those things. Well, what if he had said later, I'll do that later? Well, the longer it took, the further away he was to the physical peak, right? And most likely, if he waited, he would never been able to do his challenge. Well, that's swimming, that's Olympics. That's not what Joanna talks, but it's a good example for us to see that by postponing our goals in life, thinking that tomorrow I'll be better to do this. We're just being very immature psychologically speaking. And she says that when we do this, when we postpone our goals in life, we're just reflecting what that, remember what we said, that the individual desires and the community, we're just reflecting that our focus is really on those desire for immediate gratification. Okay, let's talk about how we are brought up in our society. Most of us, at least I was, right? We were brought up to be successful. We're not brought up to have a failed marriage, for example, or inability pass your school exams or going to college or getting the job. We are brought up to be successful in whatever endeavor that we say we want to do, family, profession, whatever. And so Joanna de Angelis reminds us that the definition of success is not really what this definition, right, is not really what we need, because what we all of us need is inner peace. And having a, I don't know, a large family, which may be the definition of success for my parents and my grandparents, right, and great parents. um it may not have been that the purveyor of inner peace they would have otherwise. I don't know. I don't know, that's a good example. But let's perhaps pause a little to reflect on the notion, the antithetical notion, if you will, of uh, the sense of humanity versus individuality, and individualism itself, how it can lead to very egocentric behaviors. Are we, do you think, are we recognized as a pillar of society, as a someone, a hero, when we only think of ourselves? Maybe yes, maybe no. Because when we are so closed to ourselves, we look at the contributions of the others. But at the same time, we are brought up in this individualistic society that I'm immersed on, and individualism leads to that notion of competitiveness, right? We are always fighting to be number one, and when we're fighting to be number one, we are perhaps leading to an environment of mistrust. In the classic notion of the zero sum game, right? And the sum game just means for you to win one, somebody loses one, and that's a zero sum, right? Minus one plus one. But that idea that if I am promoted, for example, amongst my peers, well, somebody was not. So sometimes when one is promoted, the other one is even demoted, or as the zero sum games implies, when in order for one to win, one has to lose. So in this in environment of implicit competition at every level, right, we start to see that your peers, our family members, our partners become potentially natural adversaries. And so I go back, oh boy, right? We live in a material world that is capitalist, and leads, because of capitalism, to consumerism in this very individualistic, competitive society. Oh, the West, how hard is it? But how does it look like if we think about it, right? For a company to thrive, the company that I work for example, it must produce something and it must sell its products, and it's year over year it is pushed to grow and to grow its market share. Think about it, if it's a pie, right, the limited, if my company grows its market share, another company will shrink, we would think, right? And it's a never ending goal. Is this goal to grow and grow and grow may mean to destroy others in the same line of business. And as an example, it just tells us, or is a telltale of how lonely this is. And I just keep thinking about for professional to be his or her best, right? It must focus. It must be the best. It must be the best, well trained, and most fit. No mistakes, and he or she must fight for promotions, and it this discussion here makes me think of a leadership training that I recently attended, in which the central theme was that how lonely those leaders, executive leaders, feel as they go from just out of college, their first job, and as they keep growing and as they climb the corporate ladder, the lonelier they become. And for another counterpoint to this is the fact that for those that are socially mobile, right? For whatever reason, in order to demonstrate it, it's not something that it's very one plus one equals two. You don't do this because of that, right? But it is intuitively or inherently expected that in order for those who are socially mobile to be able to demonstrate they made it, right? To be respected. And they do this now by perhaps having to display a certain type of place of living, a house, a super large house, exclusive club memberships, Ivy League education, luxury car, latest even look, right? And you just keep thinking, my goodness, you keep being promoted, but then you keep expending your needs for material acquisitions or investments. And I struggle thinking about, as I said, something that is really personally hurtful to think is homelessness. And just by the way, I was looking into our favorite mega retailer, Amazon, and saw, by the way, posted a now a series of previously owned luxury items, and specifically was a beautiful blue um, leather bag that cost previously owned a brand new car. My goodness. And I see this, and I also see if I go walking the streets of the city I live, I seen people having to look for something to eat in trash cans. It's those are should be irreconcilable realities, but they're not. And quite frankly, there's nothing wrong to want that purse, by the way, right? There's nothing wrong in the company that I work for to grow, or for you and I to want to study and be, keep growing professionally. What Joanna de Angelis tells in this chapter is really given this sense of awareness, of alert, that this endless pursuit of external attributes, or this endless pursuit of acquisition, may take all of our energies and may lead us to forget about ourselves, simply put, right? And she mentions in passing, by the way, that we'll do this, we'll forget about ourselves, and oh, by the way, the unintended negative consequences about this rat race, if you will, and also coupled with forgetting about ourselves, our sense of well-being, our sense of balance, our sense of peace, a sense of self-discovery, sense of identity, is that the unintended consequences are anxiety, fear, but most important, loneliness. in our current society, as you know, we're always pushed to seek, to achieve, to be the best, to aspire to be number one. But the underlying need is that we all are looking to be accepted, and this underlying need for self affirmation in whatever we're doing, right? Whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, but we need to be validated. And sometimes we're successful. Sometimes even when we sabotage ourselves, or we come up with, is this even worth it? So, a couple of examples really of self sabotage, but also looking and says, oh, it really, I spent 30 years of my life doing this. So, anyways, the first example was attending they called WIT, Women in Technology. It was a symposium talking about requirements in this rapidly changing technological environment, right? But these women in technology are discussing what they call this phenomenon, right, of so many women who were able to climb the ladder in the field of technology, all the way, for example, as either CIO or CTO, right, Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer, only to find at the top of the ladder, and they're like, oh, I think I put the ladder in the wrong wall. Sad but very appropriate metaphor. Are we putting our letters in the right wall, right? Another example, real quickly, because of interest of time, is in the entertainment field. You would say for actors, the Oscar is the most the top validation of your career. And as we know, Will Smith, who spent his long career getting to that point, and the same day, right, the same moment that he's not only nominated but awarded an Oscar, he does the self-sabotage and really puts himself at peril to lose it all, or many others, for example. But I think it's unfortunately that, let's say I'm a woman in technology, and I did this, and now I'm at my peak. I'm not looking at the wrong wall. I like where I am at. But then, let's say this is just fictional here. My company is acquired by somebody else, and boom, I am replaced, even at my peak, right? I am replaced, and the new CIO, CTO will retire me, if you will. And even though I have achieved the top of my career, the new person that replaces me may not recognize what I've done, or even worse of it all, undo everything I have previously accomplished. And we see this even in, say, nonprofit organizations, where one leader that does all out of love and that mission, a really valuable mission of this organization, and they leave, and the new one comes in. Let's undo and start afresh. And this is something that must be terrible for those who are going through this, to spend a life where the sense of identity is directly connected with an achievement, and that with the best of the best scenario, it doesn't mean anymore at the end of getting to that peak, right? And so, emotionally speaking, psychologically speaking, just a question for you and me: how do we feel, and how to believe or behave when we are the ones who are quote unquote discarded, right? When we are in a place that our usefulness is no longer required. And I must say, this process is one that I invested all my life without looking at myself, who I truly am, and who I truly should, my purpose in life. I transfer my purpose in life into a profession or entertaining field in this case, and at the end of it I get nothing. So that emotional response, I am sure, is one of shock, maybe angst, right, or even aggression to all of the system that caught us, and we really left with nothing. So let's just talk a little bit further about this process, and we'll wrap it up here. The process of self-identification, because do we human beings really ever get to know ourselves, right? How do we describe ourselves? If I am to ask you, please describe yourself or introduce yourself, just an example, and I immediately think about The Little Prince, right? The book written by this French writer, Saint-Exupéry, that published, I think, is 1940s. And you have to think right in between the war and the story of the little prince. And the what I remember the most about the book is that he comments, right? He makes observations about life, about being adult and human nature. And in this case, he speaks about how do we introduce yourselves. Hi, my name is attributed. I do this, I am this, but the am is always a function of what I am currently as a role performing in this case, right? And we describe maybe what we do. We may even associate this description with our external goals, right? Our external current focus. Huh. But we most often camouflage our feelings. In fact, for a large majority of us, we don't even have the language or awareness for how to speak feelings, right? Or how to get to this quote unquote foreign place, which is our inner self. So, on one hand, we are distracted and we're brought up to achieve realizations that are ephemeral in the with the notion of our immortal soul. On the other hand, we are not really equipped or taught to work toward this inward identification. And the good news is that experience, regardless if you're taught or if you're immersed in a culture that does not value that, our experience just by living enables us to this process of self-discovery. We learn about ourselves even more when our minds are open to inner values, right? And Joanna is talking here. um, she's just really telling us that we get to do better when we attribute lesser meaning or significance to material, economic, or even social accomplishments. And if we think about it, right, these external and material accomplishments are measured against the inevitability of death, the vulnerability of our bodies to diseases, particularly those that are terminal or incurable diseases, or the fact that at a certain time of our lives we're cast aside or even abandoned or even worse, betrayed by those in our lives or loved ones. And she says we when we do that, don't when we don't put those those goals, and we are confronted by those in the inevitability of growing old and dying, for example, we face that the fact that we really may not have the structure or resilience to withstand everything that comes at us, right? How are we prepared, for example, to hear of, and this is terrible to say, but are we prepared to hear that your best friend is dying or has lost a its own ability to survive, I'm talking about financially speaking, but also all those things that can happen to make us so vulnerable. Most of us have not built resilience, right? uh, on a different note, and forgive me for drinking a little bit here, Joanna de Angelis reminds us that yes, we experience will teach us, and no, we may not be built or have the resilience to deal with the things that life throws at us. But she also uh, reminds us, so point counterpoint here is that we are very resourceful, right? And we're so resourceful that we don't even know how strong we are. And she says, whenever you decide in the process of doing this inner voyage, right, this inner voyage toward your self discovery, you start to explore the strengths, you start to explore those dormant potentiality that are waiting to be developed. And Joanna finally makes this beautiful invitation for all of us to initiate, to create, to move on in this process of self-discovery. And she says, when you do this, you are actually finding your authentic happiness, your real aspirations, right? Those goals that are part of foundational is speaking, the sources of strength of your life, and will help us be outfitted perhaps with all the assets that our spirit, immortal spirit, needs. So how to do that? Well, we just have to have courage, and we have the courage and curiosity, I would say, to decipher our own enigma. We should have a little bit of confidence that it's not an unattainable goal, that we all are able to do so, and that we will be successful, right? And when we do this, we will reach the notion of true love and real truth. And those are the qualities when we attain that will give us peace and serenity. The process of self discovery, very much like a house renovation, by the way, right? We start like, oh, I see a little crack here, let me go fix it. And we see there's an electrical problem behind it. You fix that, and then you see that there is, so one thing leads to the other. So, like the process of renovation, we we do one step at a time. Once we overcome one in this self-discovery, something else opens up, and it requires more courage and more confidence and more curiosity to look into this. So it's all about this continuous, right, this continuous desire to reach the wisdom and the infinite wisdom, I would say, in life, that is our gift. So some words from Joanna, right? She says, you will get some roadblocks, right? Um, and escape mechanism are those that stumps our growth, but that ignorance, lack of self-awareness is actually caused by our fears. And yet, what is unknown, right? What is unknown is the type of thing that leads to anxiety and all forms of suffering. So, in comparison with childbirth, that labor that is painful, right? We should have the same feeling that we will, after the child is born, we will be transformed into a new person, right? And it's a great metaphor. So the initial step to self discovery is just examining the possibilities with a sense of determination, with a sense of capability. I can confront that, and without any justifications or avoidance. I am going to stop here because I was going to talk a little bit about Sophocles and the Greek tragedy of Oedipus, right? When he looks and he finds the truth about himself, he blinds himself, which psychologically speaking is he doesn't want to see any further. So Joanna talks a little bit about it because she says we gotta have courage. You have to determination to keep on looking, right? And she tells us to just be ready to reach your authentic freedom, which is that is acquired once we are in this process of self discovery, once we are confronted in accepting who you are. So with that, I would say thank you, right? Thank you so much for being here with me, and we will continue the this third part of the book next week. We will talk about ethical consciousness. Love it. So thank you so very much, and I look forward to studying this book with you. Bye bye.